This past July 4th, I was able to be a special guest, or I'm not sure what it was called, Namgil, at the Tibetan sports games at Jefferson High School. The mayor sometimes is not able to make it to a function, and I have been very happy to do this. And this is a most interesting group of people. We all take our freedom in this country for granted, and these people have an interesting history, which I wasn't aware of. I was just a teenager in the 50s when things kind of fell apart in Tibet, but he will give you some of that information. Namgyal DorjeeI is the current president of the Tibetan American Foundation in Minnesota, and I didn't realize we had so many Tibetans in the city of Bloomington, but he can tell you more about that. He let us know about the history and what they do. I was especially impressed with the fact that these adults here, the parents of these kids, make sure that their children do well. They're very close families, and they make sure that they are employed, they're not living on welfare, and that they do very well in life. So this is a culture that very few of us know about. My husband's dressed in the Norwegian sweater today, so, and this young man, or this fellow, is dressed in his national outfit, but I'm gonna give the podium over to him, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, guys. As introduced, my name is Namgil Dorji. I am the president of Tibetan American Foundation of Minnesota. So before I talk about Tibet and Tibetan American Foundation of Minnesota, first of all, I would like to thank Rotary Club of Bloomington for inviting me and share about Tibet and Tibetan American Foundations with you guys. And also, I would like to thank Councilwoman Nordstrom for accepting our invitation to be the chief guest in the Midwest meet, which held here in city of Bloomington from July 3rd till July 6th. Midwest region meaning Chicago, Madison, and Minnesota. We have a large number of Tibetans living in those three areas. So every year we meet. There's a sports competition, there's a basketball, soccer, women's basketball, and also cultural performance held every year. So this year, 2013, we held here in the city of Bloomington, and we invited mayor of the city, but he wasn't available. But I'm very glad you came, and along with her husband, very humble husband, because we invited her as a chief guest. He liked to sit in behind the scenes, so we invited him. So usually people want to grab the front chair, but he was so humble, sitting in the back. So we kind of invited him to be part of our show. So thank you for that. Tibet. Today I'm going to talk about Tibetan situation, and the Tibetan American Foundation of Minnesota here. As mentioned, that Tibetans in Minnesota are increasingly getting more and more, because we have Tibetans coming from the other states and moving into Minnesota. So I'll talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about Tibet and China. If you look at the map, that's actually supposed to be the map of China. And if you look at this part here, this is Tibet. China, the original China is the white one right there. This is Tibet, East Turkestan, Mongolia. So right now, the China occupies all this, the inner Mongolia, East Turkestan, and Tibet. Okay, so this Tibet by itself is independent, free country for many, many generations, for many centuries. But in 1950, China, the communist Chinese, attacked Tibet from the eastern part of Tibet, right here. And then they started to come and finally invaded Tibet and came to Lhasa. In 1951, they made the governor of one of the province. So governor of the Kham Amdo right here was compelled to sign agreement, they call it 17-point agreement, by the Chinese, at that time, the Chinese army. And in that, it says that Tibet belongs to China, or Tibet is part of China. So they made this governor of Tibet to sign that agreement, which was a big blow to the Tibetan movement right now, because every country in the world hardly recognized Tibet was an independent nation. Even though we've been living freely for many, many generations, many centuries, but in the real world right now, if you talk to any government, any, of anywhere, they hardly recognize Tibet as independent nation before, but they always consider Tibet as a part of China. It's because of that, the agreement that made this governor of the province they have to sign it. If you look at down here, the Tibet by itself is a landlocked country. It means that we don't have any access to any water, any sea. On this side, you have the Nepal. I'm doing not good. Sorry. Right here, Nepal, and the whole part here is India, and then Pakistan. So Tibet by itself is a landlocked country, but because of the altitude or the height of Tibet is a plateau, it's a raised. Lots of all these rivers actually originates from Tibet. So right now the Tibet is under China, and they're controlling a lot of rivers, a lot of water that is being flowing through from Tibet, and Chinese are making dams and creating a lot of destruction to the river that some of these countries down there, you can see all these countries being affected, but by what Chinese people or Chinese government are doing inside Tibet with the river, changing the course of river, making dams. So if you look at all these countries, the rivers, we have some Brahmaputra in India, which actually originates from Tibet, goes to India and then to Bangladesh, and then Yellow River in China, Yangtze in China, Indus in Pakistan, and then Arun, there's another one in India. All this here, Burma, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, their river, just like Mississippi River, it originates from Minnesota. All these rivers actually starts from Tibet. And this is some of the maps of Tibet. Even in Tibetan, we always talk about Tibet as a snowy mountain. We talk about snow line, because all the directions, all the 4 sides of Tibet is mountain with snow. And we live in kind of in a valley, but actually it's a raised plateau, but everywhere is surrounded by mountains. Even when we praise His Holiness, or when we talk in songs, we all talk about the mountains and the snows, all this stuff. Location-wise, it lies in the center of Asia, just like I show you. Square kilometer is about 1 million square kilometer. It's pretty big space for the people of 6 million Tibetans. So we are trying to find out, trying to reason ourselves why Chinese invaded Tibet. We don't have any oil, but why did they invade it? Because the area of Tibet, and it's only 6 million, which is same as the state of Minnesota, but it's a huge land, mostly mountains, but it's a huge land. So that's the one reason why we think that Chinese, they need to expand their land That's why they came to Tibet. And there are other reasons as well, but that's the one reason we think that because of Tibetan population is pretty low, 6 million Tibetans. And out of 6 millions now, because of the Chinese invasion, about 2 million Tibetans have died. So we are left with only 4 million or so. So that's how the population is, it's very scarce, very less in Tibet. One reason is because we are Buddhist. The Buddhist, we tend to send our younger, the medium second son to become a monk, to be a part of a religious institution. And then in some of the big monasteries, we have about 10,000 monks in one monastery. So the monks and nuns, as you know, are forbidden to get married, have kids or families. So they literally become, celibacy in their own lifetime. So we don't have anybody, extending the generation. So they pretty much confined to the monastery life. Maybe that's the one reason why we have less population. So that's 99. As you see here, 99% of the Tibetans are Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhism, and 1 or 2%. I'm not sure about 100, but it's mostly when we talk, it says 99% are Buddhist, and 1% we have. Pon is actually the native the religion before the Buddhism came from Tibet, from India to Tibet. There was a religion called Pon. That's called native religion. And Islam and Christianity, we have very low number of people following them. And Christian is mostly when we came to India as exile, as refugees, and there were at the time back in 1960s, early 60s, a lot of Christian missionaries helped some of these families and kids to go to schools and help them out. So some of these, Tibetans follow Christianity. So we do have the whole variety of religion, Islam. Also, they came from Ladakh, which is near Kashmir. Some of those Tibetans, they have lived. Some of those Tibetans live in Lhasa. As he mentioned that he went to Lhasa, that through generation, but their religion is Islam. So we have very few of them. And our official language is Tibetan, the one that we speak, usually at home. We call it Tibetan. It's actually not a Chinese, it's not an Indian, but it's called, the group family is a Tibeto-Burman language. So it originates between the Burmish and Sanskrit with Tibetans. We have no way connection with the Chinese characters or Chinese language, entirely different. This is the capital city of Tibet, Lhasa. Lhasa is the capital city, and then Potala is our Capitol Hill in Washington D.C. We have all the buildings, the Dalai Lama's palace, the government offices, everything in this building, and this was built actually originally built in 7th century AD. And gradually it renovates, but originally it was built on the top of the hill. It's called Potala Hill. So that's the whole building is actually the building, the capital city, where every time when you look at the map of Tibet, it always shows this because this is the original one. Then for the political leader, as you know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been a political leader and a spiritual leader for many years. I will show you a little bit about when he get enthronement, but when he was about 15 years old, and the Tibetan government told him that you got to take the political authority, otherwise the Chinese are already here. We need you to take the responsibility. So from 1950 up to 2011, for 60 years, he has been taking both the political and the spiritual leader. But then in 2011, he decided to give away the political power to the elected people or elected person, elected by the people. And he has this vision. During we have the Tibetan Democracy Day. I told them to my community members that in the Western worlds, in other countries, people are fighting for democracy. People want the power. But here we have one leader who has the power, but he wants to give it to the people. He wants to give it to the people so that people can elect. Even after he dies, he wants the institution of democracy flourish in his own in our community. So in 2011, he gave his political power to the elected person, and right now the one person on the right-hand side happens to be our political leader. And the reason why I put the photo a little bit down, because we cannot compare him to His Holiness. His Holiness is always up there. And I just put him a little bit down. And that's the respect we have for His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And for the spiritual, there is no question about it. He is the head of the Tibetan Buddhism, even though we have 4 different sects or 4 different traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, but he is the main one. Everybody respect him. Okay, so next one. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Tibetan culture. Just like in most of the Western, the Eastern culture, actually, I should say, parents and grandparents take part in child rearing. We believe in the joint family. They live together. Brothers live together. In some of the remote areas in Tibet, 2 brothers get married to 1 wife. Which is, I know it's illegal here, but in Tibet, it's not a tradition, but practice goes on like that, because it is believed that when you have 2 brothers married to 1 wife, everything, whatever we have, stays in the same family. But this practice is no more, it's outdated practice, but it did happen in the past. So I thought that I should mention that to you guys. And when the child is born, usually the parents don't give their name to the child. The child the name was bestowed or given by the priest. Therefore, in our Tibetan culture, even here, the kids have a different last name than the parents, because the name was not given by the parents, but it was given by the Lama. Usually, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and there are other various lamas. They give the child name. And as Tibetans are very religious, they would spend money. Whatever religious activities or spiritual things they need, they would 100% spend money for that. And for the elderly people, towards the end of their life, they spend a lot of their time praying, not working, but praying, not worrying about the money, how much money they have left for their kids or nothing like that. But they pray for the next life. To be born in the human form, to be in a better form, not this form, not in the condition that they have it better, in the sense that we believe that whatever you have right now, whatever you are, is because of your previous life's karma, and whatever you do right now, whether you're a good person, bad person, that will determine in your next life. You see the concept here? Whatever you are, whether you are rich, you are educated, or whether you are born with some physical disabilities, or whether you are like a Paris Hilton, born in those millionaires, families. It's because you did something good in your previous life that you were born in this kind of family. Whatever action you do right now, that will determine what kind of life you will have in the future or next life. Therefore, some of the elderly, most of them spend their time praying, wheels. Maybe you have noticed that in Tibet that a lot of they like to go around the stupa and monastery and the temple, doing this circle to gain some merits, and then whatever they did in their life, maybe some bad choices they made, they want to get the forgiveness and then carry on with the next life. And usually the man's the head of the family, and this is in Tibet. That's what I'm talking about, not in America. And the women, usually take care of their families and the kids. But in America, everything's changed. We can't say that anymore because they work too, But in Tibet, usually they, not just in Tibet, I think most in the eastern culture, they have the man's head of the family, and then whatever they say, everybody agreed to that. But in Tibet, because of the Buddhism, and because of so much emphasis on the spiritual values, that second son must join the monastery or must have to be a monk. But they have a choice, but usually the parents would send their second son to be a monk. And some of the celebrations we have, mostly anything with Buddha's events, the day he was born, the day he became Buddha, the day he died, all this religious observation, we always observe that. It's a very sacred, especially usually in month of June, we have these 4 events taking place the same day. It's a full moon day, and that's a lot of Tibetans are fasting for the whole month because of the event that took place during that full moon day. And it is believed that if you do that, you gain a lot of merits in your life. The Buddha became enlightened, and he was born. He became enlightened, and also he died on the same day. So that's what we believe in. Other than that, Tibetan New Year usually it happens in February or March, and Dalai Lama's birthday is usually it's July 6th. So that's the one time that this Midwest that I just mentioned earlier, that the Councilwoman Nordstrom was the chief guest. We held that Midwest during the time of His Holiness' birthday. So it goes July 3rd, 4th, 5th, and the 6th is July 6th is His Holiness' birthday. All Tibetans come out and celebrate. And usually in July is a nice weather, so they come out and celebrate. Then Tibetan National Day, National Uprising Day, that's on March 10. And back in Tibet in 1959, that's when all Tibetans in Lhasa, in capital city, they revolt against Chinese on that day, and the thousands of Tibetans were killed on that very day. So we observe that we still, every March 10th, we go to the state capital, we protest, not protest for our people, but protest in shouting against the Chinese, what they did in Tibet, and also remembers those people who were killed during that day and the years after that. Tibetan Democracy Day. So that's the one that I in one of my speeches to my community members, that Tibetan Democracy Day was given to us by His Holiness. In other countries, other cultures, people are fighting, even though they have the freedom, they have the independence, but they are fighting for the democracy. But we don't have a country. We are refugees. And I proudly say I'm Tibetan, but I never been to Tibet. I'm one of those Tibetans who were born in refugee camp in India, who have never seen Tibet. But I proudly dress myself as Tibetan. I tell my kids, you are Tibetan. My kids are born here in New York City. You are not American, you are Tibetan first. That's what I always tell them. Because we need to keep that culture, Tibetan culture, because in Tibet, Chinese are making Tibetan culture into Chinese culture. But in exile, we have this responsibility that we need to keep that vibe, we need to keep that culture alive. So, and then I was talking to them as well. 2010, I became a U.S. citizen, and I applied for visa to go to Tibet. I saved enough money to go to Lhasa. Lhasa is the most sacred place in Tibetan, whole of Tibet. The remote area people, they come all the way to Lhasa. Even there's no trucks, no cars, but they walk to go to Lhasa. And we want to go there too, but we are not never given the Chinese the visa to go to Tibet. And the reason why we are Tibetan. And they scan the names, and any names related to Tibetan, your visa application is rejected right away. Because I was telling them as well, one of my friends who applied for visa go to Tibet, and he applied through online. They call him in person, we want you to come there tomorrow. And this person drove 8 hours to Chicago. Usually it's 8 hours to Chicago from here. Only to tell him that your application is rejected. They know the names. Has last name Tibetan, start with Tenzin. You don't need to call somebody 8 hours to come up there and tell them your application is rejected. They're doing it on purpose. So that's how the Chinese are treating Tibetans, not only in Tibet, even here in America. This is happening in here. So look at their influence. And December 10, Nobel Peace Prize is 1989. His Holiness was awarded Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, Norway. We take it very, that day or that event was very significant in our history because of the prize, and His Holiness' name flourished all over the world. Even in people in Africa, South America, who have never seen Dalai Lama before, they kind of know who he is because of the event. So therefore, December 10, from 1989, we always commemorate this day as Nobel Peace Prize Day. And it's also a Human Rights Day, which also we celebrate Human Rights Day, but we tell UN and other government agency, it's a Human Rights Day, you gotta do something about human rights in Tibet. We also remind them about what's happening in Tibet, but at the same time, we celebrate this because that award was given to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we know that every year, the Nobel Peace Committee awarded to some individuals every year. We know that. But then we take this as a very special because it is awarded to His Holiness. Also, October 17, which I forgot to add, U.S. Congressional Gold Medal awarded to His Holiness in 2007. Again, that was a big event. Lots of people from Minnesota went all the way to Washington, D.C. to witness that celebration. The medal was awarded by the Congress, but the President Bush was present at that time as well. Usually, the Congressional Gold Medal awarded by Congress Speaker, but President hardly, they try to invite, but hardly presence during the ceremony. But in 2007, when this was given to His Holiness, President Bush was also present at the same time. And the Dalai Lama, the institution of Dalai Lama, actually it's started from 1391. The first Dalai Lama was born. And then in 5th Dalai Lama, if you look at the 1640, that's when he became the political leader of Tibet as well. First Dalai Lama was only the spiritual. First, second, third, and fourth Dalai Lamas were just a spiritual leader.
So from 5th Dalai Lama until the 14th Dalai Lama, until 2011, the institution of Dalai Lama, or His Holiness, the office of His Holiness, controls both the spiritual and the political. But in 2011, he dissolved his own political power and given to the elected member. So current Dalai Lama is the 14th in a line, and we regarded him as a reincarnation of charity, which is the Buddha of compassion. And everywhere he goes, if you watch or listen and observe his message, his speeches, it's all about love, compassion. We are just a human being, same basic human being who needs happiness, who doesn't want any suffering. Let alone other people, even our own family members, we want to see everybody happy, not problem, no suffering. So that's what his message is. That's why we believe him as a reincarnation of charity. So this is His Holiness. Came to Minnesota in 2000. In 2012, that's the Rochester. One of the reasons why Tibetan community in Minnesota is very lucky is that His Holiness came here several times in 2001, 2011. That's the official trip. But unofficial, he always come here to Mayo Clinic, Rochester, for medical checkup. So we drove 2 to 3 hours down to Rochester to welcome, just to see his face, to glimpse his, we call it a blessing, but in English you can say just to see him. And we look at the people behind the lineup. And because there were so many people at the Rochester Mayo Clinic, that they have to have the patient go to the other side because everybody is coming in to see him. So that's where wherever he travels, a lot of Tibetans actually come and see him. So we are very blessed to have him come here. Brief history about Tibet: been free and independent country for many centuries, but every now and then it's sometimes under China, sometimes under Mongol, sometimes under Nepal. Just like India was under British for 200 years. And in 1904, British India, we call it British India because British were the main power and the country is India, they invaded Tibet in 1904. And then they stayed there for 3 years. That time the Dalai Lama escaped, the 13th Dalai Lama escaped to Mongolia. Okay? And then in 13th, then there's one argument, we always say this to China. If Tibet has been part of China for these many centuries, as they claim, where were you when 1904, when the British India invaded Tibet? Where were you? There weren't. Because it clearly shows that Tibet is an independent, separate country. Because the Dalai Lama has to go to Mongolia, why not go to China? Right? So these are the arguments we have for them saying that Tibet was never a part of China. And then 1933, His Holiness, the 13th Dalai Lama passed away. And then 14th Dalai Lama born in 1935. Many people asking me about Dalai Lama. The other day we have a birthday celebration. They invited some of the local politicians, and probably you might have heard about the young Lama born in Columbia Heights as an incarnated Lama. That was in Star Tribune 2 years ago. And that was his birthday, and they're asking, when this Dalai Lama dies, is he going to be the next Dalai Lama? No. Dalai Lama is different. We do have a lot of lamas. We do have a lot of spiritual leaders, but the Dalai Lama is the top of the line. So when he dies, then he will leave signs and marks and indication that where he's gonna born again. Okay. So right now he is saying that he will live up to 113 years. So that's a good news for Tibetans. And he said that when he's around 90, that he will leave the indication where he will be born again. So in our belief that His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has this high realization that they can choose their death and they can choose their birth. That's what we believe in. So right now he is 78 years old, but he says that when he's 90 years old, then he will leave indications where he will be born. In 1940, he was enthroned as the next Dalai Lama, as the Dalai Lama, 14th Dalai Lama. So like in 5 years, look at the 35 he was born, and 40, and he was enthroned as the actually not head of the country, but its head of the country is 1950, when he was about 15 years old. That he, as the Chinese are coming in from the eastern part of Tibet, and the ministers, or the cabinet minister at the time, they decided to give the whole full political power to this young Dalai Lama when he was only 15 years old. So from 1950 up to 2011, he has been our political leader. I didn't mention here, but in 1954, he went to China to talk to Chairman Mao. And Chairman Mao said, during the visit it was all right, but towards the end of the visit, Mao told Dalai Lama that religion is poison. So that is a big blow to His Holiness, because he is supposed to be the religious leader. And before the beginning of this session, I know somebody led the prayers. We pray, right? We are a religious, spiritual person. But then here is this person who said that the religion is poison. It will not help you to develop yourself or your country. So that's a big blow to His Holiness, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and that happened in 1954. And he vividly remembers each and every word that this chairman, Mao Zedong, told him. And he was about 22, 23 years old. That, yeah, Mao Zedong told me this, he told me that. And in the beginning, he thought that Mao was a good socialist. He tried to help people. But then towards the end, his incline or his motivation is just to crash the Tibetan Buddhism. And he says that. And then in 1959, Dalai Lama, and along with him, lots of Tibetans came to India. My parents are one of them as well. Since the invasion, we have 2 million Tibetans died. And then because of the Chinese policies in Tibet, there were 124 self-immolations. The reason why they said there is self-immolation is because they could not go on the street and protest. If you do, you get killed. So therefore, there's no way for them to show their anger, to show their dislike to the policy. They set themselves on fire. And then in doing so, they have those 3 demands: return of His Holiness to Tibet, freedom in Tibet, and human rights in Tibet. So about 150,000 Tibetans came out of Tibet, and 10,000 live in United States, and then 3,000 actually live here in Minnesota. So that second part, I was going to talk about the foundation, what we do in here in Minnesota. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Yes.
Your political leader, is he Tibetan or Chinese? And the second part of the question is, since the Chinese are taking over, are they also sending Chinese citizens to live in Tibet?
Yes. The first question is, the political leader is Tibetan. We elected him here in exile. Actually, he is from United States. He went to Harvard. He got his PhD from Harvard Law School. And he is residing in Dharamshala, which is the headquarters in India. The second question is very important, because right now Chinese are sending lots of Chinese immigrants into Tibet, and they have this railroad built. Now they can easily bring those Chinese people into Tibet and making Tibet minority in their own land. and each and every job in other places, you have to speak Chinese to get a job. To go to school, you have to speak Chinese. So that's why I tell proudly that I'm Tibetan, because we have to keep this culture alive. In Tibet, they have no choice. Good question. Anybody else? Yeah.
Are there negotiations going on between the Dalai Lama and the government of China to make Tibet free?
Good. There were a couple of several talks, but then the problem is that Chinese always want to distort the history. The first condition they have is, we want you to announce or make this apology that we are wrong to say Tibet was a free country. You must say that Tibet had been part of China for centuries. So that is the one condition that the Chinese put on Tibetans, which we are not ready to accept. But other than that, we want to work with Chinese. And there's His Holiness always mentioned that Chinese are getting more superpower. They have the majority of the people if they turn into Buddhists, we have a lot of things in common. And some of the leaders are communists, but the majority of the public are Buddhist in China. And then there's ways that we can live together with Tibet and China under one big umbrella called China. But then Tibetan should have their own free, independent, or free autonomy, so that they can practice their religion, they can do the things that we do normally. But right now, it's not like that. They call it Tibet Autonomous Region, but there isn't any autonomous in that region. Basically, that's what it is. It's just for namesake for them. So we're telling them, it says autonomy. Yes, give us autonomy. What it really means under the Constitution of China. So negotiations are taking place. We have a couple of them, but right now there's some break in it. So they will continue to have a dialogue in this regard. Thank you, guys.